Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're unpacking one of the most monumental yet somehow totally overlooked chapters in ancient history. We're talking about the Satavahanas. If you are preparing for your state exams, or honestly, if you just love history, you absolutely need to know about this dynasty. They were South India's very first great empire. Specifically, they were the first great Telugu empire. And they didn't just rule for a few passing decades. No, they united and held together a massive chunk of South India for nearly 450 years. I mean, just imagine the administrative and military genius it takes to keep an empire running for 4.5 centuries in the ancient world. To really wrap our heads around the massive scale of their reign, let's look at a timeline. This is basically your structural map for exam prep. They established their power around 230 BCE, right as the mighty Mauryan Empire was crumbling up in the north. Then we see early expansion under Satakarni I around 180 BCE, a gorgeous cultural golden age with King Hala around 20 CE, absolute peak military dominance under Gautamiputra Satakarni in 106 CE, and finally, their decline around 220 CE. Keep this massive 450-year span in the back of your mind as we move forward. Here is our game plan for today. We're going to start with the rise of the empire, then look at the absolute all-star kings you need to memorize. After that, we'll break down their administration and economy, explore their incredible art and literature, and discuss their global trade networks before looking at their decline. Finally, definitely stick around for the end, because we've put together a rapid-fire exam cheat sheet that you will absolutely want to take notes on. All right, Section 1, Rise of the Empire, Building the Foundation. How exactly did this massive realm emerge out of the dust of the fallen Mauryan Empire? Well, at their absolute height, the Satavahanas were not just some small regional power. They stretched all the way across central and southern India, covering modern-day Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, Maharashtra, Karnataka, and even reaching into Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, and Odisha. They operated out of incredibly wealthy early capitals like Pratishtana, which is known as Python in modern Maharashtra, and later on, Amaravati. They were literally the ultimate bridge between North and South India. So who started the whole thing? The name you absolutely must know, and trust me, this is a very high-yield exam fact, is Simuka. Around 230 BCE, Simuka stepped right into the power vacuum left by the Mauryas. He didn't just inherit this power, though. He fought for it, famously defeating the Kanva dynasty to establish the independent Satavahana realm. Simuka literally laid the groundwork for the next 4 centuries of history. He was immediately followed by his brother, Krishna, also known as Kanha, who expanded the empire into the Nasik region and actually kicked off the tradition of carving those incredible Buddhist caves. Moving right into Section 2, the Great Kings, a Hall of Fame. Now, I'm not going to give you a tedious list of every single ruler to memorize, because that's exhausting. But before we look at the heavy hitters, here is a quick, crucial number to stash away for multiple choice questions. 30. According to the ancient texts known as the Puranas, there were a total of 30 Satavahana kings. If you see that pop up on a test, now you know the answer. Okay, let's look at 2 incredibly different yet equally important early kings. First up, Satakarni I. He was the empire's first great conqueror, uniting North and South India. He proved his total dominance by performing 2 Ashwamedha sacrifices and a Rajasuya sacrifice. That is a massive display of Vedic military might. And we know all about this because his wife, Queen Naganika, documented the whole thing in the famous Nanagat inscription. But then, contrast him with King Hala. Hala wasn't a warmonger at all. He was a lover of literature. He completely shifted the empire's focus to culture, famously writing the Gatha Saptashati. It's a gorgeous compilation of 700 love poems written in the Prakrit language. And that brings us to the absolute peak of the empire. Just listen to these magnificent titles. Dakshin Pathapati, meaning Lord of the South. Eka Brahmana, the peerless Brahmana. Tri Samuja Toya Pitavahana, which translates to he whose horses drank the waters of the 3 oceans, meaning, of course, that he conquered the entire southern peninsula. These are the legendary titles of Gautamiputra Satakarni. He ruled from 106 to 130 CE and is universally considered the greatest Satavahana king. I mean, he completely crushed foreign invaders like the Sakas, defeated Nahapana, reclaimed lost territories, and expanded the empire to its absolute zenith. We know all of this from the breathtaking Nasik inscription, which was actually commissioned by his incredibly proud mother, Gautami Balasri. Rounding out our Hall of Fame are 2 true champions of the economy. Vashishtiputra Pulumavi is famous for heavily developing the city of Amaravati and massively boosting maritime trade with the Roman Empire. Following him a bit later is Yagna Sri Satakarni. You need to remember him as the last great king of the dynasty. He defeated the Sakas again and was so obsessed with maritime trade that he literally stamped ships on his coins. But sadly, after his reign, this mighty empire slowly began to fracture. Section 3. Administration and Economy. We've talked about the kings, but how did they actually govern and pay for a civilization of this massive size? Well, the secret was a highly organized hierarchy. At the top, obviously you've got the king holding supreme authority, but a king can't run a whole subcontinent by himself. They divided the empire into provinces, and here is a vocab word you must memorize for exams: aharas. The provinces were called aharas. Under these aharas were powerful officials holding titles like amachyas, mahabhojas, and maharathis, who helped maintain local order and collect the taxes. To fund their huge armies and cultural projects, they collected revenue from land, booming trade routes, and mines. But their currency is what's truly fascinating. The Satavahanas were completely unique in ancient India for minting a vast amount of their coins in lead, as well as copper and silver. And remember what I just said about Yagna Sri Satakarni? Many of these coins feature motifs of ships. That isn't just a fun decoration, it is hard archaeological proof of their booming maritime economy. You'll also see elephants, horses, and the famous cross and circle Ujjain symbol stamped right on their money. Let's move to Section 4, a cultural renaissance in art and literature. It's really important to note that while they supported early Telugu and Sanskrit, the official language of the royal court was Prakrit. If you're taking notes, star this part. Lock these 3 pairings into your memory right now, because matching these authors to their texts is a highly, highly frequent exam question. First, we have King Hala, who wrote the Gatha Saptashati. Next is Gunadhya, who wrote the legendary Brihad Gatha, though sadly the original text is lost to history today. And finally, Sarvavarma, who wrote the Katantra, which is an incredibly important grammar text. Seriously, lock these 3 pairings in. Beyond literature, the Satavahanas were master builders and deeply, deeply tolerant rulers. They offered equal patronage to Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism. This beautiful religious harmony resulted in world-famous architectural marvels. They funded the globally renowned Amaravati Stupa, an absolute masterpiece of ancient Buddhist art. They also carved spectacular rock-cut architecture directly into mountainsides, including the Nasik caves, the massive Karli Chaitya, and the Bhaja caves. Section 5. Global Trade and Decline. No empire exists in a vacuum, and the Satavahanas were heavily, heavily plugged into the ancient global economy. Imagine these bustling ancient Indian ports, where merchants are exchanging exotic goods with the Roman Empire. The Satavahanas exported highly prized goods like pepper, fine cotton textiles, pearls, and ivory. And in return, the Romans paid dearly. India imported massive quantities of Roman gold and silver. In fact, it was so much wealth that Roman politicians actually complained in their records about the drain of gold to India. They also imported luxury items like glass and fine Roman wine. It was just this thriving, completely cosmopolitan economy. But as they say, even the greatest empires eventually fall. After 450 years, the giant began to stumble. Why? Well, it was a combination of factors. Following Yagna Sri Satakarni, a string of weak successors just couldn't hold the realm together. This led to internal strife. At the exact same time, they were facing continuous foreign invasions from the Sakas up in the north. As the central power weakened, local feudatories declared their independence, and new regional powers, like the Ikshwakus, rose up to take their place. Bringing it all together, we have this incredible 450-year legacy. A vast geographical spread, vital rulers from Simuka to Gautamiputra, booming global trade, and the eventual decline. It's a massive, beautiful snapshot of a dynasty that forever shaped the history of the Indian subcontinent. Okay, Section 6. This is the payoff. If you are preparing for TSPSC, APPSC, DSC, groups, police, SI, or constable exams, focus up right now. This is our rapid-fire exam cheat sheet. These are the direct answers to the most common multiple-choice questions you are going to see. Let's hit the absolute must-knows. Who was the founder? Simuka. Who was the greatest king? Gautamiputra Satakarni. What was their official court language? Prakrit. And what was their very first capital? Pradishtana, which is also known as Python. Keep it rolling. Who commissioned the Nasik inscription? Gautami Balasri, the mother of Gautamiputra. Which king performed 2 Ashwamedha sacrifices? Satakarni I. Which king is most associated with boosting Roman trade? Vashishtiputra Pulumavi. And finally, who was the last great king of the dynasty? Yajna Sri Satakarni. Lock these associations into your brain and you are guaranteed to score marks. So I want to leave you with this thought. The Satavahanas were the grand architects of South Indian political and cultural unity. They built the trade routes, they fostered religious tolerance, and they left behind art that still leaves us totally in awe today. Without the 450-year foundation of the Satavahanas, what would the history, the culture, and the economy of South India even look like today? It is a massive, fascinating legacy to ponder. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep that curiosity alive.